You know how sometimes things just seem to happen suddenly, like completely out of the blue.
Yeah, like a big breakthrough or maybe a life change that feels like it came from nowhere.
Or that moment something just clicks, you know? After you've been trying for ages, we often label that suddenness as just random chance,
Mm-hmm.
disconnected from what came before.
Right. But the material we're diving into today offers, well, a really different take.
It does. It suggests that this feeling, this suddenness, it isn't really about randomness. It's fundamentally about reaching a threshold.
Okay, a threshold. Let's get into that because these sources, they really challenge how we usually think about change, don't they?
They really do. Like, they suggest we should stop separating that slow, gradual growth from the sudden awakening moment.
Yeah, or that split we make between internal effort and like the external result finally showing up.
Exactly. The idea here is more that reality, or maybe the universe, it sort of responds when the internal conditions are finally right, when things are ripe.
Ripe. I like that. So it's less about magic popping up, much less. It's more about a shift, a transition happening because enough unseen potential or maybe pressure has built up.
Okay. And these sources are packed with really compelling ways to frame this pattern. It's not about seeing abrupt change as causeless.
No, it's seeing it as the visible result, the outcome of all that invisible buildup finally hitting a critical point.
Right. So our mission for this deep dive is basically to unpack that pattern, this idea revealed in the material.
Okay, so let's map it out. What does this pattern actually look like based on what you found?
Well, the core structure that just keeps showing up is stored potential leads to a threshold, which then results in emergence.
Stored potential, emergence. Got it.
And what really struck me is how this isn't just, a psychological thing or a physics thing. This material shows it working across wildly different fields.
Oh, absolutely. Take thermodynamics, for instance. It's a classic example, right?
Yeah. How so?
Well, you accumulate energy, that's the stored potential in water, by heating it. Eventually, it hits that critical point, the boiling point, that's the threshold.
And then?
And then, bam, it transitions. It suddenly becomes steam, emergence. It wasn't random. It was just waiting for that energy threshold.
That makes sense. It's predictable if you know the conditions.
Exactly. Or think about psychology, those gestalt shifts.
Ah, like when you suddenly see the hidden face in the picture.
Precisely. Or you
For
finally get a complex problem. The sources frame this not as a random flash, but as the mind finally reorganizing information.
After a period of, what, unconscious processing? Or just gathering enough different perspectives?
Yeah, accumulating that potential perspective until, bang, it hits a point where the new pattern just clicks into place, the threshold is crossed, leading to that sudden insight, the emergence.
And this connects to spiritual practices too, right? Concepts like Satori.
Definitely. Sudden enlightenment isn't painted as arbitrary here. It's framed more like the visible ripening of consciousness.
Ripening again.
Yeah.
So it comes after all the diligent practice, the attention, the subtle inner work. That's the stored potential.
That seems to be the idea, like
Yeah.
fruit on a tree,
Yeah.
It doesn't just zap into ripeness overnight without the whole growth process. It reaches a state of readiness,
The threshold.
which then leads to the noticeable change, the emergence.
That boiling water analogy you mentioned, 99 degrees to 100 degrees, the sources really lean into that.
It's powerful, isn't it?
It really is, because it's not just a metaphor. It's like actual science, a phase transition. It shows how massive buildup manifests as this abrupt but totally predictable shift right at that specific point.
So instead of seeing big shifts, personal ones, or even, societal ones as just random interruptions,
Yeah.
this perspective invites us to see them as natural phase transitions.
Well,
They're driven by all the accumulated inputs, attention, effort, energy, information, whatever it is.
until it reaches that specific level where a real qualitative leap happens.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
It only feels sudden to the part of us, maybe our conscious mind, that wasn't really tracking all that quiet buildup.
But from this viewpoint, the change is perfectly on time for the whole system, whether that's water boiling or maybe an ecosystem tipping or a personal aha moment.
Mm-hmm. So thinking about your own life now, those big shifts or moments where things just clicked,
Yeah.
if you look back through this lens, this pattern,
Mm.
can you maybe spot that period of unseen preparation, the learning, the effort, the stuff that happened before the visible change?
That's a really good prompt. And it leads to, I think, the most interesting takeaway from this material.
Okay.
If these major transformations really are the result of this invisible accumulation hitting a threshold, then the question becomes, What are you accumulating right now? Maybe consciously, maybe unconsciously.
Mm. What potential is building up?
Exactly. What's preparing the ground for your own next seemingly sudden emergence? Something to think about.